to talk about what creates momentum in me, and then to paint and what creates momentum while I'm painting. So the main thing that I feel I paint a lot during is when I travel to 3 places. They're like 3 magical places. Like I like to go to Cape May, North Cape May, New Jersey, and I like to go to Paris, France, and I like to go to Sanibel Island in Florida. And those 3 places, for some reason that I can't explain, I will do so much painting while I'm there. You know, I don't really go there for a vacation. I go there to get a lot of work done. And, you know, some little paintings like those over the cash register, those were done in a little shed outside in my yard of a little tiny house in Cape May where I go for the summer. And these types of paintings, like these on the end, these were done in Paris. And the last shows I had here 2 years ago, there were a lot of paintings from Florida. Not this time, because I couldn't get there. But I feel that when I go to these 3 places, I walk around a lot. Like in Paris, I'll get up and I'll just go have coffee in a cafe, which is like the best thing in the world. And then I'll just take off and walk in no direction with no plan to visit anything. And I'll find things as I go along. And, you know, Paris is like, it's not really a circle, but it's like a long oval that goes around like this, and it goes up the hill. And in the middle of it runs the Seine. So if you know where that is, you can't get lost. You know, if you find your way back to the Seine, you'll know where you were. So I go there for like, the last time I was there, 28 days, and I did 30 paintings. Wow. So, and it's like incredible. So I just do wash on wet and wet on paper, and I'll just do them after I come back from walking, and they'll dry, and the paint will soak in the paper, and it'll lose a lot of the value change, and the color will, you know, dissipate. And I'll lay them out on the floor because I don't have my cat with me. So all my paintings will be out on the floor. And as I'm painting something else and I'm looking at the ones on the floor, and this one that I'm doing, the colors are still vibrant and the value changes are still great. And I'll see it from across the room, so I'll get up and I'll get that one, I'll work on that some more. Maybe I'll throw some lighter value, such as this. Such as this painting here. I would put this pink in last, and then I would have my lighter value, and then I'm like, oh, this just needs a swish of black, you know, so I go after the ink bottle. And then lastly, there's always little bits of gold in here. I think I'm so influenced by gold statues and whatnot in Paris that it works its way into my painting. And in Cape May, you know, and also the paintings, sort of the going around is sort of like walking around Paris to me, which I didn't realize when I first did it. But I realized, you know, as I'm going this way, making this oval, traveling around, I'm doing the same thing, like this one behind Susan. I'm doing the same thing on paper, but not knowingly, you know. Like I don't go there to paint Paris. I just go there to what I feel like in Paris. And that's how those come up. The ones in Cape May, I have a little tiny shed, which I took all the shed things out and turned it into a studio. And it has a nice little window that faces north. And I leave the door open, and I just go out there first thing in the morning. This is before I do any walking. And because the air is still cool, you know, you can hear, I have this huge tree full of birds and squirrels. And they come out and work like those two. And those are done in Cape May. So even if I'm in Florida, I do the same thing. I go out first thing in the morning because that's the only time you want to be out in Florida. I'm an air conditioning girl. So I'll run and do my whole walk first thing in the morning. And then I come back and I paint, and I'm just so happy to do it. Like some places, like my studio here in Philadelphia, I feel like I'm always fighting my paintings. You know, they just don't work. You know, it takes a lot of work to get them to work. And, you know, I don't like overworking things. But like the 3 places that I mentioned, it's like everything is so easy. It's like you just put the stroke down and it's perfect. And then you put this color next to it and it's just the right color. And it's just painting like happily. It's like the joy of painting, if you would, like the joy of cooking, the joy of painting. You know, and I only seem to achieve that in those 3 places. So I think, you know, there's something that clicks with every artist that they paint more, they paint less. But I do notice I should keep traveling because to those 3 places, because I will get tons of work done. So creating momentum was perfect for my show because it takes me going somewhere to really create the momentum. And then it takes the movement around the page and the color next to the color that continues that momentum. And that's it.
What was next? I'm next. Well, I was struck by listening to Ruth about how important place is. I imagined all 3 of us. I grew up in California, and that was really the land of earthquakes and the Pacific Ocean, the waves there, really where I came of age. When I was 15, we moved into a Spanish-style home that had a lot of arches, and then I'd hop on the bus 15 minutes and get to the beach, and just felt the power of those waves so much, and this big energy and momentum that came from them. They, in their endless repetition, just signaled a renewal and an energy that I really feel is the underlying cohesive element of all these works. They all have this mark that is a swirl and somewhere in them, and it's that mark that I think energizes the painting. So for me, these are all experiences with real encounters. They come from things I've experienced, but they're filtered through the lens of memory and something that I perceive as kind of magical in the world, that inexplicable. To me, I can know all about plate tectonics and the moon's gravitational pull, but it is still inexplicable to me how that force of energy works. And I will say that also part of the California experience was growing up with people who are Holocaust survivors, my parents, which also felt like an event or a force as big as the waves and the land moving. And yet from that experience too, there was this sense of resilience and that life is going to keep renewing and moving forward. And for me, that's, you know, the momentum, that energy again, that underlies a lot of these paintings. I wanted to mention a few of my influences. These paintings, like I mentioned, are filtered through memory. I'm not really looking at anything. I try to surround myself with objects in the studio that I find evocative, but for the most part, it's about memory and pushing paint around until an image sort of evolves. And I begin with that pushing the paint around, and I think these 2 here are probably the best example of that. I call them spontaneous utterances, and it's really about just playing with the material until something happens. And Dubuffet is really the person who kind of gives me permission to work in that way. He was someone who was intuitive and didn't really follow the Western academic canon. He looked at cave painting. He was very just instinctive in his mark making. So you can see some of that curving mark that shows up in them. Sometimes the pictures end there, and sometimes they coalesce into more of a narrative that you can read, but they all begin with this kind of moving the material around. I think a lot of artists will recognize that as automatic drawing or automatic painting, but I gave them the name spontaneous utterances, which is a legal term, because in a prior life I did practice law, and every now and then a field that prides itself on being rational and linear, like the law, will acknowledge that there's a kind of truth that comes from a different realm, the intuitive realm. And I love it when that happens, that sort of validation that there's another way of knowing, and we can't really put a name on it and calculate it and measure it. So a spontaneous utterance, without getting too technical, especially since I know there are a couple lawyers here, it's a way of saying what kind of speech we're going to give a lot of credence to for being valid, for being true. So if you overhear someone say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry I hit your car, I wasn't looking," you're allowed to say that you heard that because it came out so unfiltered and so spontaneously that it's probably true. Normally, you're not allowed to say what you heard someone else say. That would be hearsay. Because we want to examine the person who said it to address their credibility. So I just really liked how, for the name anyway, and a reminder to me that it's really valid to know in an intuitive way. Some of my other, one other thing about kind of being a recovering attorney is that
years and years.
It takes years and years. It takes going to art school. We all have our influences. I kind of look at them as precedent. Who gives me permission to paint this way? On whose shoulders do I stand? How did they open the door? And so I've told you Dubuffet is one of my precedents. David Hockney, who I think did an amazing job of depicting Los Angeles in two paintings in particular. One was called Nichols Canyon and the other Mulholland Drive. He used this kind of space that kind of reads from top to bottom rather than a linear perspective. He used that kind of space to describe the canyons and the mountains that he was driving through. He also really used these kinds of colors. So Hockney has been a big influence for me. Also, some of my influences come not from the world of art. I've been binge watching Transparent. I don't know if any of you guys know that TV movie. I see a lot of heads shaking yes. I really love that show for its honesty, and that honesty, that truth, to me is so beautiful. Just in brief, it's about a 67-year-old man with 3 children who realizes that he's transgender and is ready to take on his life, live his life as a woman now, and all the ramifications that that has for the family, to hear that. So I think in the background of my mind there was kind of Transparent running through as I was making this painting here, Truth and Beauty on a Swing. And I was so taken with this push-pull that we probably all have with our identity forming, that we're almost like on a swing. There's something you like about yourself, there's something you don't like about yourself. How are you gonna let that come out and still find it beautiful to be you? And how are you, gonna just let this swing find its equilibrium and balance? And so the making of this painting really, just to give you a little bit about how they happen. I was, as I said, working in that way, the spontaneous utterance way of just sort of creating the marks and letting the energy come through. And I started to see that there was a swing. And I thought, oh, I'll put an animal there. And the animal didn't quite do it for me, and I wiped it out and I made it a little girl, and that didn't seem to hold the complexity that I wanted. And I literally had to go up to this canvas and say, what do you want to be? And until I get to the point where I'm ready to risk losing it, nothing is going to happen. So, I could feel myself just wanting to paint a mustache on that little girl. And I knew that I could really lose this thing that was kind of going okay, and I liked it. But that's the risk that I think you have to take every single time. And as soon as I put that mustache on her, I realized that, well, yeah, of course, she's a man, girl, boy, child, and she's going to have to figure out how to find that beautiful and true. So let's see, another couple of influences or precedents would be Gauguin and Redon. I love that kind of symbolism and exotic locale. That comes out a lot in these. And also Carl Jung is another non-artist precedent for me, that sense of collective unconscious, that knowing that we all have intuitively. And the archetype, the animals. For me, I like to use animals because their emotions are so on the surface. And yet they aren't as specific as a human being, so I think it allows for us to put our own meanings on animals. I'll just sort of end by saying that for me, everything I'm depicting here seems true. This one here is kind of a good example. It was rotated many different ways as I was making it. But I know when I look at that painting, ultimately, I'm seeing my father, who was this very heroic figure, carrying the rest of the family on his back until we just grew and blossomed. I know it's a very personal interpretation, and other people are going to see other things, but I feel it's important to just sort of put out there what it is personally for me. It's a personal kind of art, and hopefully it has an emotional truth that other people can recognize something in. So, great.
Well, when Tina suggested the theme momentum, we were trying to decide exactly how the word resonated with each one of us. And for me, the paintings that I'm showing today represent the momentum of actually getting back to painting. I had to stop for several months, 6 months or so, because my brother was very sick and then he died. And I was going through a period where I was really pretty much paralyzed. I could do jigsaw puzzles, and I could do needlework, and I could watch the reruns of the British Mysteries on television. But I knew that I had to get back to painting, otherwise I was going to start spiraling down into the depths. So So I started thinking about the assignments that we had when we were at school. I went, like Tilda and Ruth, we went back to art school as mature students. And so I started thinking of some of the assignments that I'd been given as a student. So I thought, well, why don't I just give myself an assignment and pretend I'm in class, and then I'll get started. So I had some 10 by 10 canvases that were primed already. They were just loose canvas. And so I thought, well, I usually paint abstractly, completely, without any kind of visual reference to any actual object. And so, but I knew that I didn't have that kind of strength at that time to do that. I think that working abstractly takes a lot of state of peace and tranquility and strength. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to kind of muster up paintings that were abstract. So I started with buying a bouquet of flowers for myself on my birthday in March. And I set out an assignment for myself that I would paint one painting a day and not come back and dither around with it next day, but when at the end of the day it was finished. And it would be the same bouquet of flowers all week. So I would start out with the tulips that were not quite open yet, and I'm not even sure what those are called. Astrameria, something like that. Right. Anyway, so I would paint one. Okay, and if you've ever painted a still life that has living things in it, like flowers or leaves or whatever, they keep moving, you know, so that if you come back the next day, it looks different anyway, so you might as well just start a new painting. And so I started with one, and then gradually the tulips began to open. By the third day, they were pretty much getting finished. And then the fourth day, they were just about to drop. And so that was, so as I said, I promised myself I would stop painting. I tend to overpaint. I tend to like keep on going and going and going because I keep wanting to paint. And but sometimes the painting is really finished. You know, the painting's finished before I am, so I just have to stop. And I had a watercolor teacher years ago that said it took two people to paint a watercolor, one to paint it and the other one to tell them when to stop. So then these are also a different bouquet. The following week or two I bought another bouquet of flowers and painted those on some linen remnants that I had and I had stretched, and so they were, I love the color of raw linen. I love that neutral beige that's the linen. So I tried to keep it kind of peeking through and not overwork it. Also, because I've been doing needlework kind of in this interim period where I wasn't able to do much of anything else, I started realizing that needlework really has to be, you have to isolate certain areas to make shapes, and you put on a certain kind of red in one place and then a yellow next to it. And so it's a little bit more precise, and it's almost like doing a jigsaw puzzle in some ways. So I tried to mix the color and then put it on with one stroke and then left it alone. And so I tried my goal with these two, and also the one over there, was to mix the color and put it on with one stroke, not try to do any shading, not try to muddy it in any way, and just see what would happen. So, let's see, I'm going to see if I have written anything else down that I was going to say. No, I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to say something about these. These are exercises in texture. They're acrylic, and they're actually what the driving force was at is I had a lot of leftover paint from a sculpture project that I had to do, or that I did when I was in school. I was coloring plastic drinking bottles, and I made a sculpture that was 10 feet high for my third year student show. And so I had a lot of bottles filled with clear, kind of very faint, kind of pastel colored acrylic liquid. And so I just started dabbling those on. And again, I had a lot of paper ready, primed, and so that I could do whatever I wanted with them. I like to work in a series, and I don't feel so committed to one piece. If it doesn't work out, I feel like, okay, I can throw that one away. No one's going to miss that. So it gives me a little bit more freedom if I have multiple. So in this case, there's 6 of these. And sometimes they actually turn out, so. So I do try to make them so they could be framed maybe if they actually work out, then, then I might want to show them. So. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
Question for Ruth. Did you ever look at those 3 sites and the products that you produced at the 3 and see if there's any particular differences that come out?
There are differences. I think all my Paris paintings pretty much go around the page in a big oval thing. Whereas the things I do in Cape May, like these, are more centered. Even though you still will travel around, I don't give you the line that makes you travel around in it. And in Florida, it has a lot more to do with the plants than anything else. Abstracted leaves and things like that. So yeah, it does make a difference. I like the Paris ones the best, so I'll just have to keep going.
He doesn't have to be in Paris.
That too.
Tilda, I wonder, do you abandon a lot of canvases that don't sort of finally come together, or you just keep reworking?
I put them away for a while until I can figure out what's next, but I have a lot going at once, but I don't really abandon them. I like to have something on there already to go back to. So, I mean, sometimes they come out very quickly, a one-shot deal, and that's great when that happens, but then something else, like that large one, that took almost 2 years, actually, off and on. It was sitting there for a long time with my not knowing how I was going to resolve it, and then, like always happens, just one day when you least expect it, an idea comes in and you just finish it.
What's the cat's name?
There is no real cats. So, tiger, I don't know. The thing is, I thought it was a bug, but a number of people have told me it's a cat. So.
Ruth, what's your cat's name?
My cat's name is Twinkie.
Just wanted to hear you say that. So did you guys all travel together at the academy? Were you in the same class?
We were the same year, and
Mm-hmm.
our studios were on the same floor. We visited each other once in a while.
Susan and I were across the hall from each other, and Ruth was down the hall.
For moral support, we visit each other once in a while.
Ruth was always walking around with big bouquets of flowers, really colorful flowers. And you used to say, the joy of color.
Yeah, I've always been this way.
Had you both started much earlier and then decided to go to school around the same time? Or?
I think, well, I stopped because I got married and had children. I had to make sure they were going to get through college and whatever. And then it was my turn. You too?
I started PAFA when my oldest was going to college, but I still had 2 younger at home. So I'd get home from PAFA around 5 o'clock and somehow had to get dinner on the table by 6:30 or 7, which is really what the hubbub and the chaos of all of that secret life of kitchens is about. But we started at the same time at PAFA.
Yeah. Tilda and I took 6 years to get through the certificate program, which is normally 4. We were part-time for the first 4 years. So we were really on that together for 6 years, basically.
We met
I
the
didn't
first
know that.
day.
I thought you started, did the 4 years like I did. I didn't know you started, huh?
I had to do it part-time at first. It was too rigorous, really, with having the kids at home still.
Yeah.
As the more mature element, this may be politically very incorrect to say, but as the more mature element at PAFA, are you willing to say that maybe you taught something to the young generation, and are you willing to say that maybe they taught something to you? I mean, how was it? Obviously.
There's so much to disagree with in that statement, starting with as the more mature elder. He's my husband, so I can chastise him.
Season.
Well,
You can withdraw the question.
my attorney's right by my side. But no, clearly, we used to talk at home about, there was clearly a difference in the generations who were learning the same things. I'm just kind of wondering whether you felt you learned something from the younger generation and whether you felt you gave back to them.
I just think it was great to be around the younger generation. I think it makes you feel like you're younger yourself. And I think they saw that we worked all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the younger ones, you want to go play all the time. And then rush to get their work ready for everybody. Some of them.
Well, they had different developmental issues to address. It was important for them to become friendly with one another in a way that for us, we needed to get our work done within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
That's that.
Were there different visions in the art that people
that's-
talked about?
Everyone, I think, has different visions.
Well, it's very humbling to be there. I mean, I would be working in a class on something that I was very happy with and then look to the person next to me who was 18 years old and think, oh my God. I mean, they painted like Rembrandt. So it was just, I really just had to go through a real adjustment to what my expectations of myself were. And then, but also, I think not realize that combined with just spending a lot of time in the library and going to every lecture that I could possibly go to and seeing all the different range of art that was being created and being accepted, all over the world. And I just began to realize I can do anything I want, really. There just are no rules. And so that was, but that took about 6 years for me to come to that.
I think that we probably appreciated it more than younger people appreciated the school for the 4 years. We wanted to do our work.
In general, the school is really, everybody's pretty mature. I mean, even the youngest students are
I was
really know
always
what
really
they want.
impressed with
Yeah,
the
I was really
young
amazed how
people.
committed everybody was.
And
I
they
mean,
were
for instance, I
smart.
expected everybody to be glued to their cell phone, at every second. And whole days would go by where I didn't see anybody on a cell phone. So they were serious about what they were doing.
There was a body of knowledge that PATHA gave us that I know I just really wanted to learn. Perspective and massing in and realistic space, and I couldn't stand it that other people out there knew this information and I didn't, and yet it's not the way I choose to paint now. The way I paint now is a lot like the way I used to paint before I went to PATHA, honestly. But I needed to know that, just for my own confidence going forward with what I was going to do.